Alright, so we're back once again, and today, for a little bit of change of pace, I thought I'd bring you a ranked game that I played fairly recently. And I think this game, although it doesn't go as expected, I think it really highlights the strength of the Minotaur so goddamn well. And that strength notably being the fact that, you know, the Minotaur isn't all that good at chasing ships and chasing them down. What it really excels at is when the enemy team tries to push into you. When the enemy team comes to you, you have such potential to do so much damage. It's actually insane. The comparison I like to make is I compare it to basically a torpedo DD. When you're trying to torpedo an enemy ship, if it's running away from you, it makes it so much more difficult to actually hit the enemy ship. Whereas if it's coming towards you, there's a much higher chance of hitting it, and the probability of hitting torpedoes is a lot higher, and it's a lot easier to actually map out where the ship can go. But with that being said, ranks, this game in particular, is a bit of a rough one, and it's a rough one just from the start, because basically we have a Z-52 and a Shimakaze, whereas the enemy team has a Marceau and a Småland. And I don't need to tell you all that much, but if a Shimakaze meets a Småland or a Marceau, it's not going to go well for the Shimakaze, and the Z-52 even, for that matter. But I think the bigger threat when it comes to ranked is just the sheer amount of radar. It's not so bad once you hit rank 5, but once you hit it's not so bad below rank 5, but once you hit that rank 5, you're going to be getting games with 3 radar generally per game, sometimes maybe 2, and sometimes even very rarely 4 on the enemy team or your team. Which is why I wouldn't really recommend playing DDs unless you're 100% confident on how to play them once you hit that rank 5. Cruisers seem to be a bit better, and obviously battleships are tried and tested. But again, our Z-52 is kind of oblivious to the fact that there's a Petropavlovsk less than 6 kilometers away from it, so yeah, I think you know what's going to happen in a second. And well, the Marceau isn't shooting at him just for, the fun. And the Conqueror isn't, and every enemy ship on their team isn't shooting at the Z-52 just for fun. He's radared, and if he had known that the Petro, well, I don't know how he didn't know the Petro's right there, he wouldn't have even attempted to cap that. And I think this plays into a bigger issue with ranked, is that people are, myself included, we are very impatient and we want to win harder all the time. I do this a hell of a lot, and generally I had no trouble getting to rank 5, but the lack of patience really starts to hamper you once you get into those higher ranks. And if you're just a little bit over eager to get those kills or get those caps, like we've seen with the Z-52, you're going to end up losing a hell of a lot of games. Now at this point I realise, again, even though the enemy team is pulling into me, I can't really handle a Hindenburg, a Petropavlovsk, a Conqueror and a Marceau by myself. So I think the best thing to do in this scenario is obviously pull away. The Thunder does get a mighty salvo on the Hindenburg, which is nice, and I think at this point it's just my job to finish off the Hindenburg. And again, people really underestimate the power of the Minotaur. I think the fragile nature of the ship is very off-putting, which leads a lot of players just not even entertain the idea of playing it in ranked, but it is definitely viable. And I'm having moderate success playing it. I tend to stick to ships like the Thunder, and sometimes the Daring too, and Yamato of course, tried and tested. And trying not to stray too far from those types of ships. But we do get the kill on the Hindenburg, which is pretty nice. I'm not going to complain. And at this point we just want to get undetected. Again, we're out of range of the Petropavlovsk radar, and the only real ship that can spot us now is the Marceau, because obviously the Småland's on the other side of the map and killed our Shimakaze. Kind of as expected. Again, I could say it's a fault of the Shimakaze, but again, if the Shimakaze so much as gets spotted by the Småland, it's game over effectively. But one thing I will like to point out right now is the fact that we have lost sea, but if you look on the minimap, you can see our Yamato. He is pushing the Montana. And there's one thing I want to point out with the Yamato, is that if you see the little shiny cheek on the Yamato, if it's not completely angled and not completely bow in, if you hit that cheek, you're going to send that Yamato into the next life, shall we say. I just want you to keep that in mind and keep looking at the minimap for the next, I don't know, 30 seconds. And I think you'll understand why. But anyways, back. Obviously we know that the Smollett is capping A right now. He hasn't pushed all the way in, otherwise he would be capping B too. So we have a really good idea of where he is. And it kind of limits the threat of me being spotted. Now, at this point, there's not all that much the enemy team needs to do, and as the Yamato goes down, my point is proven. But, again, we're out of range of the Petropavlovsk, just, and we do see the Minotaur. Again, not really sure why he's detected full above 9.1 kilometers, because generally we have the same ship. You'd assume he'd be running the same loadout, but we do get some hits, some pretty decent hits, and this is generally a really good spot for me to be in right now. Now, the only real threats here are Minotaur torps. Petropavlovsk radar isn't all that much of a realistic threat because he is at 13 kilometers, and him pushing those 2 or 3 more kilometers in kind of commits him to pushing all the way through, either into sea right here or through here and here, which again is showing a lot of broadside to a ship like a Thunder, which is not the most inaccurate of ships, shall we say. And again, at this point, they're all kind of coalescing, the enemy team's all kind of coalescing into A, B, and they're kind of coming towards me, which again plays right into the Thunder's or the Minotaur's hands, and we start farming the Montana. Now our Des Moines does go down, which is kind of sad. Again, he had to pull away from A, B because, well, he's just getting overwhelmed. Once that right hand flank pretty much collapsed, there's the Minotaur torps. The right hand side starts cross-firing over, and you kind of have to abandon that position. Otherwise you're just going to die even more quickly. But we are going to dodge the torpedoes, and then something unexpected happens, is that our Venezia comes back across, which limits spotting significantly. As you can probably see, the little a little bit aggressive chat message. Again, to be expected in rank, you know, not everyone's going to be 100% calm 100% of the time. Speaking from experience. But with that being said, with the Venezia pushing across the other side of the map, we lose 100% of spotting on the Montana. And as a result, it forces me out of the smoke. Again, the smoke's timing out already, so it's not all that much of a threat. But again, just being forced to make decisions because, you know, again, there's no other good decision is really, really horrific. And at this point we get spotted by pretty much every ship on the map. And I would say this is skill, but I think it's more due to the fact that the enemy team just refused to detonate me, effectively. I should, for all circumstances, be dead here, 100% of the time. Again, we have a Montana, we have a Conqueror, we have a Petropavlovsk, all shooting at us, and the Venezia does manage to get the kill with my spotting, so well done to him. But at this point, again, you can see the effect of the Minotaur. It's like a magnet for win harder teams. Again, they're all just pulling into me, and I'm just going to farm them all day long. Now, if I was the enemy team here, especially if I was the Conqueror and the Petropavlovsk, my main goal here would just be go dark. Just go dark. You have 3 caps, you have the points. There's no reason here to push. But again, this happens a hell of a lot at this tier, where teams just have to win harder. They have to get that little bit extra damage. They have to pad out those stats a little bit more. And again, I seem as though I'm, you know, ranting at the enemy team or ranting at players, but I do this stuff too, and it's as much of a rant at myself and a chance to improve for myself as it is a rant at the enemy team. Now here comes probably one of my biggest mistakes of the game. is the fact that I just changed my position. I changed where I was looking because I thought just by straight reversing that I would dodge all these torpedoes. I've got the angle to effectively dodge them, and I take so much more damage than I needed to. And again, this is the typical win harder by the conqueror. And I don't need to tell you just how effective, just how incredibly effective a minotaur can be at a flat broadside on a battleship. It can absolutely destroy them extremely quickly. Although I don't think this conqueror is all that bothered by it for some reason. Well, whatever. And again, they're pulling into you, they're pulling in, and you're just farming them consistently over and over again. No, I'm putting this game up here. I don't want it to seem as though this was like actually, you know, my team being bad and me just trying my best. Because there's plenty of mistakes that I made in this game too. Again, not telling the Z-52, not being more vocal about radars. These are all things that I didn't do, which I could have done, which 100% could have affected the outcome of the game. Because if we don't lose that C-52 immediately, then, you know, who knows what happens in the game. Our right hand flank doesn't collapse, it doesn't fold into the left hand flank, and we have large potential to, based on what you're seeing right now, with the Conqueror pushing just YOLOing, we have a large potential to actually maybe win the game. But again, as we reach 150k damage, it's just not looking all that good. And well, with 2 enemy DDs still up on the map, it's pretty much donezo. We do manage to get the kill on the Conqueror, which, if I had a little bit more HP, then, or if the Venezia was a little bit closer, then we'd actually not be in a terrible position. But considering how long we spent without caps, looking at the points, looking at the game, looking at the small and radar, it's going to be a GG. We're not going to be able to withstand this, and the game's going to end, unfortunately. So GG's, and I'll see you all in the next one.